I often get a lot of requests to show how my orchids grow over time, especially from seedling to blooming size. A couple of years ago, I got a bunch of seedlings. Most of my collection was seedlings. And now 4 or 5 years later, I have a lot of blooms. So in today's video, I'm going to show you an update from the 12 orchids that I got from the Tamiami Orchid Festival in 2021. It was a really nice trip. I got a lot of beautiful orchids, and a lot of them are blooming now, or they've grown significantly and they're about to bloom. So, in this video, I'm going to show you the growth of my orchids that I got over time from this trip. And I had a really good time in this trip. I went with my mom. We came back with, I got about a dozen orchids. She did the same. I packed them up pretty easily. I got mostly seedlings. Nothing too big, just one orchid that was bigger. And there was so much to see here. And what I enjoyed was I don't have many orchid nurseries by me in New York. We have White Plains Orchids. That's the only one very close to me. But if you want to smell an orchid, or if you want to see how big an orchid is or what it looks like, you really can't do that here in New York too often. So it was nice to smell some orchids that I've never had before. It was nice to see some species. There were a lot of Brazilian growers. There were a lot of different vendors just generally globally with seedlings, with established orchids, with some division. So it was pretty cool. I focused on the seedlings and it was great. And I would go back. There was so much of a variety of orchids. And somebody actually approached me because they recognized my voice from my videos. So that was pretty cool. I definitely go back, but I probably wouldn't buy as much as I did, just given that my collection is just getting so big and it's just too much. So I would go for specific things. But if you're on the fence about going to on a trip like this, I highly recommend it. You could find a lot of orchids that you probably can't find if you don't live in like Florida, for instance. You're pretty lucky there if you have some good nurseries by you. But these were the orchids that I got. I packed them up in a little Target tote bag. I used little brown bags too to separate them and make sure that they didn't spill. I used some napkins. I brought some masking tape so it was nice and easy. And then I unboxed it for you. So let me show you everything I got. So the first one is a Brassavola Jimminey cricket. This was like $10, and unfortunately the entire root system was dead and it didn't survive in my collection very long. So that was unfortunate, but I was able to replace it with another plant which is growing really well for me right now. But this one died pretty fast, and this one was not my fault. It was the roots, unfortunately. Sometimes it is my fault, though. You're going to see that some of these orchids have, not all of them made it. I have 8 out of the 12 that I got, but sometimes they are my fault. So I'm going to walk you through my mistakes so you don't make the same mistake. Now, the next orchid is the Encyclia Steinbachii. This was the very first Encyclia that I ever got. I got it from a vendor called the Orchid Fix, I believe. They're based in Hawaii. They do wholesale only, and they go to shows, but this is a species Encyclia. And I thought I could treat it like a Cattleya. You guys can check out my Encyclia care video from a few weeks back if you want. But I've learned with this orchid and the other Encyclia that I got that Encyclias are a little bit different. But anyway, I had this in semi-hydro when I first got it, and then I started noticing that the bulbs got shriveled. It wasn't really doing so great. It was okay in the beginning, but then after about a year and a half or 2 years in semi-hydro, I ended up moving it to bark and sphagnum moss in a clay pot, and this is what it looked like last year. It started pushing out additional growth, so this is 3 years in my care. I would say that this more than doubled in size, and this is what it looks like this year. I haven't touched it. I don't want to touch it. It's a species. These need nice abundant water, but they need to dry out, and the root systems are a lot more sensitive. Now, I don't know when this will bloom. Hopefully, maybe next year. Now the season is sort of coming to a close, but you could see those wrinkled bulbs, and that's from the semi-hydro, which wasn't working so well. So I'm going to keep my encyclias more like this and something more airy, let them dry out. But now this is recovering, and I think this will grow a lot better in this setup. The next orchid that I got was the Cattleya Aclandiae, and this is a wish list orchid for me for a very long time. Now, this orchid was pretty much a seedling when I got it. You could see it's pretty tiny. I got the coerulea version. I got it from Jimminey Orchids, and there were quite a few to choose from. There was coerulea, there were darker ones, there were regular ones, but the coerulea looked really cool to me. And look at the root system. It was very healthy. It was very small. And I've been happy with it ever since. So I was so excited. Really, the trip was for that. And now this is what it looked like last year. This is after 3 years of growth. As you could tell, it kind of rambles. It grew roots through the bottom of the pot, and it was overdue for a repot by the time I was showing you this video. So I had it in a 4-inch pot, and it grew beautifully. It hadn't bloomed at that point. It's starting to kind of spread. The Cattleya Aclandiae hybrids tend to do that. They kind of like ramble. Every once in a while, they'll throw a growth that's like further down. But I was hoping that it would bloom for me this year. I have hope that it'll bloom from the newest growth because it grew so well for me in the last couple of years. Now, that was 3 years ago, and this is what it looks like now. I repotted it about a month ago. I put it into a 5-inch clay pot, and honestly, it's probably going to spread further. I put a little stake there to try to prop the growths up a little bit. It's getting a lot of light, so I think I waited too long to repot it because there were a lot of aerial roots, so I'll be more mindful of that. I'll water it thoroughly. I'll make sure it dries out, and I'm just waiting for new growth to pop out from this side, and hopefully we'll finally get blooms. I'll keep you updated. The next orchid that I got was the Phalaenopsis Amboinensis Nicole. And my mom got me this one because it had my name on it. And I got quite a few really nice Phalaenopsis from the Orchid Festival. I just find that a lot of what I get, I really love Hauserman, but a lot of their Phalaenopsis seedlings are very small. So I found a lot of pretty decently sized Phalaenopsis that are bigger. So this was a good one because I have another Amboinensis, but this one has yellow in it, and the other one is like a white or a cream color background. And this is what it looked like a year in. It pushed out a spike. It started growing sideways. Now, you guys know that I don't love how it smells, but I really like how the bloom looks. It's very, very pretty, so I'm going to keep it. But it smells like burnt rubber, burnt plastic. This is what it looks like now. It has bark over the top, but I'm growing it in 100% moss. This pot is small enough to accommodate the root system. It has very decent roots. We have a new leaf growing in. And hopefully it'll bloom again soon. It looks like we have a bud coming in, and we have 4 different spikes. And this one tends to get a lot bigger, so we'll see how it blooms this year. Again, very pretty. Don't love the smell, but that flower is very, very pretty, so it's going to be a keeper in my collection. It's really nice. So the next Phalaenopsis that I got was Phalaenopsis LD's Bear Queen, and I got this from Wilson Orchids. I got this and a few others from Wilson Orchids, and the price was very reasonable. Good size too, very nice root system. I got this because I wanted to get something to be a companion to my Phalaenopsis LD's Bear King. So you guys have seen that several times. It's one of the biggest orchids in my collection. They smell similar. LD's Bear King smells like orange Tic Tacs, and this one kind of smells like a lemon lime candy. So they're both very citrusy. This one's growing well. I have it in moss. This is what it looked like last year. And this is what it looks like now. I repotted it. I put it back in 100% moss again, but I topped it off with some bark. And we've got 4 blooms on this spike that are incoming. I have to make sure to keep it hydrated or it's going to be more like a cupped flower that doesn't fully open. So I'll stay on top of it. But I tried to straighten out the growth. They tend to lean sideways and get a little bit heavy, but when I repot, I'm trying to straighten it out. But again, this is another good one. I'm very happy with how it's growing, and this is what it looks like 4 years later. So not too bad. Another fowl that I got that was on my wish list was the Phalaenopsis Bellina coerulea. So I have a Phalaenopsis Bellina that's like, I think it's apple fantasy or something like that. And it's a red one. So this is a blue one. And this smells incredible. I think it was also only like $20 and it's growing really nicely. So this is what it looked like last year. It was pushing out a lot of growths. It was growing sideways though, and I don't know what to do with these sometimes when they start growing sideways. So I'm trying to tackle it when I repot. You can't control how these orchids grow, but when you're growing indoors, when they start hanging over, sometimes they get top heavy and you have to get like a heavier pot or something like that. So I ended up repotting it a couple of weeks ago and I started straightening it out. And it's actually in bloom right now, which is great. So I fixed it a little bit. I leaned it over so that those roots that were hanging out on the other side were kind of tucked in. This smells wonderful. We have another bud coming in here. Each time, I think it's just going to give a better show. I mean, at the festival, I saw a huge Bellina with several flowers. It was so pretty. But I think this is an orchid that everyone should have. Now, I did damage one of the leaves because it was touching a light, unfortunately. But this one's doing well, and 4 years later, I'm really enjoying it. It's such a pretty one, and I think everyone should have one of these in their collection. So the next orchid I got was another Encyclia, and these were the first 2 Encyclias that I've ever gotten, so it was my first experience with them. This was Encyclia Cindy, and this was a cross. Unlike the Steinbachii, this one is a cross between the Alata and the Tampensis, I believe. And this one's got a beautiful flower. I was so excited for it. It was $15. Nothing crazy, but I moved it to semi-hydro and it sulked. It never really took to the grow method. So then about a year and a half later, I repotted it into moss and bark, and it just sulked and it kind of wobbled in this pot. I was hoping that it would finally kind of acclimate, but this is one of the reasons why I moved away from semi-hydro. I just noticed that some of the orchids declined, and then when you take them out and then you switch to grow method again, I mean, guys, I'm telling you, this was over a long period of time. It's not like I switched a lot. I gave it about a year and a half in semi-hydro. It declined, then I moved it to this, and then it just sulked, declined, and finally it didn't make it, unfortunately. So this was completely my fault. It was the grow method, so Encyclias don't really like it. So that was a lesson learned for me. On a brighter note, I do have a really nice orchid to show you that did exceptionally well. So I got this little seedling from Planteo la Orquídea, and this was a Richard Mueller hybrid of the BLC Haiku Dawn. So this was a small, tiny little seedling. It was super cheap. Look how little it is. It kind of reminded me of my Pauella spots, and I got this before that Pauella spots even bloomed. Some of these flowers are kind of similar. Last year, it just grew tremendously. So even in semi-hydro, I actually had it in leca, and it was happy. So, I mean, semi-hydro does work for some orchids, but sometimes it doesn't. But the Richard Muellers are a lot more forgiving. And I ended up potting it to bark and moss when I started moving out of the grow method, and it pushed out so many new growths. Now, at this point last year, it didn't bloom. It just kept pushing growth after growth. But I think this is pretty remarkable after getting it as a small seedling. And the root system was very extensive, very, very, very big root system. Now it's even bigger. So I repotted it. I think I couldn't really get rid of all of it. So I did my best to clear out the roots from that pot. I think I ripped some of them off, but with a hybrid like this, they grow very well. This orchid has only bloomed for me one time, and Zoe has decided to eat a lot of the leaves. I had to cut a lot of them, but it's so vigorous that it really doesn't, it's not bad. I hope she doesn't eat more of it, but I think it'll get more blooms soon for me. Next one was another seedling from Planteola orchidea. So my favorite hybrids are Richard Mueller hybrids and Cattleya Aclandiae hybrids. So I'm a sucker for those. I just find them so pretty. This was Cattleya Bernie Blanck, and unfortunately I put it in semi-hydro and it really didn't like it. No surprise, the Aclandiaes, they're not hard, they're quite vigorous. You're going to see another Aclandiae hybrid that's very, very vigorous, but this one was a little bit weaker and it didn't really make it through semi-hydro. I think it was the grow method, it just needed more wet-dry cycles. This is a contrast, though. This was another Aclandiae hybrid, and this is a seedling. So this was the Cattleya Fascelis, and this one surprised me the most. Now, if you can believe it, there were 2 plants in this pot. I didn't even realize it until it grew even further along, but I had no issues when I moved it to semi-hydro. It kept growing. It was vigorous. It bloomed often. But gosh, this was a nice one. It just grew so well for me. I ended up dividing it as well in 2023. So 2 years in, and I had to divide it, but found out it was 2 plants. So this is last year. This is one of those plants, and my friend Emmanuel has another piece in Florida. It just grew so well. This was a vigorous one. So it's not a blanket statement. When I say that Aclandiae hybrids are a little bit more finicky, not all of them are. Some of them are quite vigorous. But depending on the plant vigor, some of the seedlings can be a little weaker, like that Bernie Blanck. But that was the grow method, I think. This one, though, it's very vigorous and it's growing even bigger now. And I really have to repot it. So I have a growth that was growing downward. I'm trying to train it to grow up. Kind of annoying when you grow indoors. The old growths, they're losing their leaves, which is completely normal. So I noticed that the back bulbs started dropping. So you'll see some yellow leaves in the back. Those are the oldest growths on this orchid. Completely normal. But this is very vigorous. It's bloomed for me several times. You could see each growth has like a spent little spike there. Highly recommend this one. I really love the dark colors on it, and the fragrance is amazing. This next one, very similar to the Jimminey cricket. This is the Cattleya luteola. The root system wasn't great, and the luteola can be a little bit tricky. It likes the temperatures slightly cooler than what I can give it. So it was bare root, but it was in a lot of wet moss, and that killed all of the roots. So I just struggled. It didn't do well. So you just have to be careful with that. The next orchid that I got was the biggest orchid in this whole entire haul. And this is the LC Trick or Treat. I got this from Planteola orchidea as well. Very pretty. This one is called LC Trick or Treat Más Naranja, which means more orange, and it lived up to its name. I did not repot this orchid for like 2 years, so when I did, it was completely overdue, and it didn't skip a beat. Like, I repotted it. A lot of the roots were dead, but it bounced back. I wouldn't even say it had to bounce back. It just kept going. It grew really nicely. It grew tall, though. This is one of my taller Cattleya orchids. You can't really tell from the photos, but it's a tall one. I had to deal with some pests on this one. It had spider mites for a little while in 2024. but I got rid of them. You could still see the damage though on the leaves, but they're completely gone now. I treated it. And when this blooms, the blooms last like a month, sometimes 6 weeks if it's not too hot, which is incredible. This is what it looks like now. I haven't repotted it yet. I'm going to leave it in this pot this year, I think, because it's only been in the pot a year and a half. Again, it's a vigorous one. I don't think it needs constant repots. Even though we have some roots coming out, I think it's going to be okay. We've got two growths that are the two biggest growths this has ever had. There are sheaths here, so this is going to bloom very soon. I really like this orchid. It's a keeper. It's a big one, no fragrance, but again, if you have a cattleya that the blooms can last 6 weeks, that's pretty unusual because most cattleyas, at least for me, the average bloom time is 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how hot it is. So that's the damage I was showing you from 2023. It's perfectly fine. The new growths are good. No more pests on this one, but this is a nice one. I enjoyed buying from that vendor, Luteola Orchidea. Highly recommend. Very affordable orchids. Lots of variety and lots of very pretty hybrids. I hope you guys enjoyed this update. Let me know down below if you want to see more updates with growth over time like this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.